Is there a question?
Oh.
Suzanne?
Mhm.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's 12 o'clock and I'm opening the meeting. Calling the meeting to order. I have passed around the sign-in sheet and we do have quorum. And so next on the agenda is approval of the agenda.
Where you want?
Hi, Mayor, come in.
You're about to. How you doing, Tom? 2 months. This is for you. Right? We got that yesterday.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Okay, I have a motion from Eric Larson to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
I have a second from Eric Kazort. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed? Say no. Motion carries to approve the agenda. Now we have the approval of the minutes, which we do have April and May's minutes. You read,
I have no problem.
I didn't.
shall I have a motion?
I move that we accept the minutes as
I have a motion to approve the minutes for April and May meetings from Eric Resort. I have a second from Eric Larson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Motion carries to approve the minutes. Next, we have reports. Too fast.
I just want to let you know that I have clean copies of the minutes that I'll need you to sign after the fact for at
10
least.
copies.
Huh?
10 copies.
Are there? I don't know. There might be.
Two of it. I
But,
thought you said 10.
no, I'm just saying I have
Clean
clean
copies.
copies
Okay.
for Lisa's benefit because she was not here and available.
Okay.
There's also been hard copies put around for the report. So a couple of different things that we've got that have been big this month. One is the statewide rejuvenation and remarking. We were on the list last year for this, but weather and other different delays and equipment delays and things of that nature got us pushed because it's not as easy to close this airport like it is a lot of other airports in Tennessee. And so we this past week we're closed down for luckily only 5 days. It usually takes a little longer than that to work around other things, and the weather worked out with us, worked out great for us. Probably the best week we had for weather, and we're just amazing how that worked out.
It's only one back.
They did all the asphalt on the airport except for right in front of Arian, which is that's their asphalt. So everything else has been, the asphalt on the airport's been rejuvenated, or most everybody calls it a silk coat, but they kept trying to correct me when I call it a silk coat. And that's because I'm old school. I still call it, it's actually a rejuvenator. So it won't stay dark for all that long. It'll actually start soaking in and doing its job, and in turn it'll start fading again. But it looks nice and shiny out there right now,
A lot of
and especially
pictures.
when you fly in. There are temporary markings. So after the rejuvenation has to seal for about 30 to 30, at least 30 days. And then they come back in and do the permanent markings. So we will end up having to close for another day when it comes time to close the runway again. And during that process, you'll see at the bottom of the drawing, I've actually included a photo. You can see where there was some damage done at the end of the taxiway. This was just right inside the whole short line. They found a soft spot with a 80,000 pound piece of equipment, and they turned on it and it tore up our asphalt. The state of Tennessee is going to cover that cost. It's not going to be any cost to the city to be repaired. It's just going to be the hassle factor. Luckily for us, because of our large taxiways, we still have, even navigating past that, we still have a taxiway larger than most GA airports, even with that amount taken out, because that's about 65-foot wide taxiway right there that most everybody has a 35-foot wide taxiway.
How big is the soft spot?
The part that's going to be repaired is about 75 to 100 feet long. That depends on what the contractor says when he gets in there. And it'll end up being 35 feet wide by the time he's done with it. The engineer sort of what he could tell, looking at it, it's going to be about 75 feet long, but when you start pulling equipment in and out, it could end up changing that and expanding a little bit. Wright Paving is going to do the work because they're very familiar. And so the issue that Wright Paving has is that of other commitments that they already have, they basically, it's got to be done this month, the month of June. Because starting in July, they have a I-65, I think, that they're going to be working on, and it's going to take all his manpower plus some to work on the interstate. And he's going to be booked up for the balance of the summer that way. So we're talking a while if we don't get it done in June. I was hoping to coordinate with the remarking, the closure that was required for the remarking, for the permanent markings. Not sure I'm gonna get that lucky. So we might end up having to either displace and or close the runway at some point in time because it is inside the whole short line. So I'm trying not to close the runway. I'm trying to just see if I can do a displacement. But what that will do, if nothing else, will shut down the instrument approaches on that end. It'll shut down operations, at least in the daytime. I doubt very seriously he'll run his crew at night because it is just a patch job in his mind. It's not like it's the full runway. So we'd be able to reopen at night and have full function at night without the displacement. But during the daytime, we'll have the displacement in place, at least a 500-foot displacement. So that they can work freely in that area. We'll see. We'll see how it goes and see the coordination on that and make sure all that's taken care of.
Is that the 180 or 360?
It's right on the turn up here on the north. It's really just, it's taxiway. At first, when they told me about it, I was afraid it was a runway, but it's actually still considered taxiway alpha is what we call it, right there on that turn, but yeah, right there on the north end of it. And the other thing that, of course, that I wanted to point out when we're doing construction is the fact that we finally have Hawkins and Price here. We're very excited to have him there. They're our contractor that's doing the sewer project. So they are here. They had a notice to proceed starting on the 15th. So they're going to be with us for 120 days. So they've got about 100 days left. And they've been already boring under 231. You might have seen signs out there, but the equipment's been out there, and there's the cones out there close by and some of the signs. So they've already bored under 231. They bored under our drive entrance road. They're working on the water conveyance area. We don't really call them streams around here on airports. We don't have streams on airports, but there's an area right over there that they're working underneath right now that they're trying to work through some rock and do some boring over there that's just to the west of our maintenance building right now is where they're kind of digging and we're making a lot of noise. Then again, they'll bore underneath the taxiway, the little small stub taxiway that leads to the T hangers. They'll bore under that. The rest of it's all going to be dug and dropped. And looking forward to getting all that taken care of. One other thing that's construction as well that coincides with that somewhat, but I didn't put on here because nothing's been set in stone just yet. Working with Duck River on getting electrical to our new hangar sites. Dr. George's hangar has broken ground finally. He's gone through codes and been able to fight that fight. And has started the process. They've started the process. In the meantime, we've been working with their contractor trying to get electricity to the site and working with Duck River. It looks now that we're going to be able to set a couple of poles instead of having to do some digging, which will save us some, because I have money in the budget set aside for utility work already for the site prep. When we start having to dig and having to bring in independent contractors, then we have to go through all the bidding process. The city can directly pay Duck River easily with no problem because they're sole source. But the others, when we start getting into other stuff and digging, and then it gets delayed. And I don't want to delay. So I'm hoping that Duck River is going to, it appears now that Duck River is going to be able to set us a couple of poles and we're going to be able to work with that instead and work with the high voltage that's going to be required there and just keep it above. That we just got to coordinate. The reason why I bring it up now is because it's got to be some coordinating with the sewer, because the low pressure line, both of them are wanting to go in the same spot. Because that makes sense, going between the hangars. That's where they're going.
Right.
We got 2 rows. So we got to make sure that they get the proper separations. I think they got to have a 6-foot right of way, 16-foot right of way between for that line to be clear. And we got to make sure that there's no crossing and things of that nature, because other hangars that are coming in will need to attach to that. And we don't want them to cut the sewer to do so. So we just got to make sure all that coordinates. So during this whole process, we'll be laying it all out and making sure that we can do what we need to do. I'm hoping we can stay above ground just to avoid crossing that sewer line. Also, it's been interesting, even though we've had, I don't know how many different people try to mark utilities out here. They're still finding some buried treasures as they start digging. And it's just because it's just.
How many colors you got? How many colors you got?
We got all kinds of different utilities but they get surprised every so often asking if stuff's still on. They give us a call and say, so we don't know. There will be interesting to see what all they find out there because of the hodgepodge that is this building. Following on down, you can see the fuel there. The numbers are down just a little bit, which is, for some reason, it does do that. They're similar, not quite, but similar to May. For some reason, May, this just seems to be a transition time. And things seem around here a little slower. But operations wise, we're still everything's still running about the same. One thing that we've had just recently, and unfortunately, during the marketing project, they had to go somewhere else. They were running out of Tullahoma, a freighting company bringing for a business across the street here. They were having to run out of Tullahoma and they were having to pass our airport, the trucks were having to drive past our airport to drop off a delivery at, for some reason, I keep having Aludine
Yeah.
over here behind the hospital. They've been bringing for almost 48 hours now, bringing about every 2 to 3 hours, bringing a plane in, one crate at a time. They brought one airplane in that could handle 7 of them, and for some reason they brought one. So I don't know if that's all they can as soon as they get a pallet full and they're shipping them out because they're that far behind or exactly what it is. But our guys, we've got some college guys working for us. And so we put them in, they stayed overnight, slept on the couch and moved forklifts every couple of hours. And so it's been, which is good. That's why you see the services are a little bit higher right now because of at the very end of the month. They would have been twice that or more than that if we hadn't been closed down. So, that's what it was mentioned before, as I've mentioned to some of the others. The marking was no cost to us, but there was a cost to us because the loss of business is what it cost us. Shut down for a week, that hurts. It was nice that the state didn't charge us anything for the process, but there is that other part of it. And there was one horse show that was affected somewhat. The spring show we were not closed over the weekend, but some people couldn't plan ahead. Some people would like to come in on Thursday. Some people even come in on Wednesdays for the very first show, just trying to get all their stuff ready to go. And they couldn't, they were going in Tullahoma and other places. And so so that was sort of, to start the horse season off. We didn't care for that too much, but there's never a good time to shut this. If I've told the state, trying to explain to them, there's never a good time to close this. And as you continue on, this is a typical list that we have of different companies, different businesses coming through. We did this past month still get another load of jet fuel from Titan, because we're still discussing and working through some contractual issues with Campbell, just because of the timing of all the different things that are on the list that need to be worked through. That contract got thrown in the stack. But Titan's been nice enough. Titan's still working with us and have their truck here for us and been able to provide fuel, the jet fuel load for us. And we're about to have to order again. And it'd be nice to be able to get it taken care of so we can get it from Campbell. So they've got a nice jet truck sitting down there ready to go that our guys are they go by and pet it every so often. I think they're so anxious to get to use it because it's so much nicer than what we've got currently. we've already started, we did some training on their POS and software that we'll be switching to at the same time. So we'll be switching over using the Phillips 66, which is also utilized by World Fuel. It's the same kind of software, same processing. So a lot of our outside transients are happy about that because they have cards and everything already set up for World Fuel that they can easily transition over for even though into the Phillips. On down, we've added, as was mentioned before, some guardrails down here for equipment for tractor trailers. Well, we added some up at the T hangers too. At the entrance to the T hangers, there's always been some big drop offs there for drainage, and because of the fact that we're going to eventually start having more traffic down through there, we added some guardrails down there as well, and so that it helps being able to where we can keep equipment from getting too close to the edge because some people have gotten close to the edge and it's starting to deteriorate a little bit over there. So we got
That's on that west side.
yes, they're right where right in front of where yours used to be there.
Yeah.
So those guardrails definitely get attention because they're nice and bright and keep people from getting close to that side. One other good thing that we got was some of you were with us somewhere. Back, but yeah, this has probably been now, when the lighting project was done 7 years ago, almost now, 8 years ago. The 4-box PAPIs were, the state said if you wanted to go LED with the PAPIs, you had to go to a 2-box. Well, the airport chose to keep the 4-box PAPIs because it's the quality of the approach. In exchange for that, the state doesn't support those because they want you to go LED. So it's been nice. One of our former project managers here called me and said, Murray County is getting rid of theirs. They're going to the 2-box because they're taking the state's money to do that. You want these lights. So our guys went and picked up the lights. So we have a full set of PAPIs as backup in case there is a structure or there's something that goes wrong. Right now, all we got is bulbs that we change out. And we're still able to get those bulbs. Hopefully that'll stay that way for quite some time. And we can still get those. Now we've stocked up on some bulbs too, but now we have the complete fixtures that we can replace if we needed to, including control panels all the way through. So we put those in, we'll be stacking those in the maintenance and hope that we never have to use them. Some typical mowing issues that come about anytime, having to fix tires, having to fix spindles, some different things, lugs, some different things of that nature. That's standard when mowing season gets going full speed ahead. Had to do a toilet repair at Mac Air for the women's restroom. We've also utilizing some things and filling in some areas that have rutted out up there by our entrance road that we filled in with some material. That's what that, when I referenced that. Some of you have already noticed the new table and chairs in the break room area. Those are a nice addition, we think, and like that setup that we can break it apart if we need to and rearrange if we want to. And some more glass has been replaced out in the terminal area. We've had an issue with the tent. Apparently the tent that we had on there now doesn't match anymore, or the glass that was used doesn't work well with the tent. So when we put the tent on it, it was like a mirror on the other side. So the runway was getting a nice mirror reflection of and when you looked at it from the ramp side. So we had we're stepping back and punting on the tent and seeing what we can come up with as a different idea. We're trying another one. He's got some ordered now to come up with something else that's not going to give us a big mirror sitting out there reflecting the sun on the ramp. And then of course spraying always comes with the mowing, trying to help make everything look better and for the guys they're not having to constantly do the trimmers. And I believe, if I recall, there's financials came with the package as well. Is there any questions or anything that I can bring up, pull up? Also in the financial side of things, this is budget season for us, so we're constantly in that discussion. And I think that's a couple of things that I'll be discussing during the agenda as well.
Looked like April's loss was not as big as the previous months. That's a good thing, right?
Sure.
Okay.
One of the things that was submitted, just as an FYI, The revenues based on rents and things of that nature by the end of the year should have, event was submitted as about a $500,000 increase next year on the next, budget.
Yeah.
Because of the increases in rents that have come through, not counting what you're going to be discussing today.
Those the chemicals were way up. Is that just a price increase in the grand scheme of things?
Yes, it's a matter, I'm trying to realize the exact percentage, but like, for example, 2.5 gallon of concentrate that we were getting at $98 per jug, but now $130 a jug.
Yeah.
Well,
So that things, when we tried different types of chemicals too, we've also brought in some retardant. Instead of just trying to kill everything and make it brown, trying to retard it and see if we can do some stuff that might be able to work that around some of the light fixtures and things like that. Because when you kill off a light around light fixtures, then you're gonna have wash. Then you gotta go around and follow it behind with labor to put dirt back in it and try to get grass to hold it tight. So what we would prefer is if we can get a stand of grass to put some retardant on it that would hold it. And that way we don't have to go back through and keeps our guys behind the mow so close to the fixtures too.
Have any questions on any of the reports?
not. I guess I'll make a motion, we accept the reports.
I have a motion to accept the reports from Eric Larson, the second,
I'll second that.
and Eric Kazor. All those in favor say aye. Any opposed, say no. Motion carried to accept the reports. This brings us to old business, and that would be projects update.
Okay. One of them I've already discussed somewhat, which is a sewer project. They've got about 100 days left on that project. There has already been one change order pushed through for some things that Shovel Power wanted to adjust. One other thing that was submitted in the budget was to add a oil water separator to the system that'll be added into the sewer system. Hope to be able to get that added in the next FY. So it'll be after that project closed, we'll have to add it, but that'll be something that will be added to the sewer system. They have yet to tell me of any major concerns, any issues. So they so far, might have just jinxed myself when saying it, but so far, everything besides the surprises, like the utility, stray utility lines here and there. Everything seems to be going like it's supposed to. The other projects that we have a airport layout plan project currently underway with the state of Tennessee. And it will be rolled over because it has been held up by FAA for quite some time. It's been pretty frustrating. Mainly because in our forecasting numbers, part of an airport layout plan is not only the drawing that you guys have seen before from us, but there's also a narrative that goes with it. And as part of the narrative, they explain it's sort of a background as to why the drawing looks the way it does. The narrative explains why you're going to see so much new development on our new ALP. Why there's some changes from our previous ALP to this. One of the things that was brought up as background for it was our operations. With that, what comes about is there are some formulas because it's forecasting. You can't, nobody has a crystal ball just yet, even though the FAA expects us to really have one. I don't know where they think we're going to pick up one, but so we utilize a formula, or planners use a formula that's been developed by FAA to come up with forecasting numbers. Well, based on the growth that we're having and based on what's being forecasted for the growth here with MTSU, with our own as well, our numbers set off a lot of red flags with FAA. And in turn, our forecasting, which has not been done on the GA airport in Tennessee, according to the TAD planners, they've said this is the first time they've had a GA airport go to headquarters. And so they went to Washington, D.C. because our numbers were so high. It has ATC very nervous. And there's a lot of things that they were arguing about, mainly because they said that's not possible. I said, well, there's a reason for that. And a lot of that's MTSU, but others as well, the other growth that we've got here too. Because of the fact that, you're looking at one runway you could have 30 seconds on your runway and that's it. You got 30 seconds to take off and you got 30 seconds to land. If you utilize the numbers that we have. I haven't found many students that can take off in 30 seconds. I haven't found many seasoned pilots, even in a Lear, that take off in 30 seconds. They need at least 45.
So where do they get that 30 seconds from then? From
You take you take the numbers, the forecasted number of our operations.
Yeah.
And you basically say you got 24 hours in a day and you start dropping it down and trying to
need
make
to
it
run
match.
this many
Mhm.
landings?
What is that forecast for?
The forecasting is based on operations. So they're saying by the growth that we're having and the growth that was planned for what's coming in by the airplanes that MTSU currently have and what MTSU plans on having, plus our current growth and following our current growth that we've experienced over the past 5 years. They use 5 years and they even go back as much as 10 years even and start seeing our changes in our operations and the change of our based aircraft and some other things in the growth in the area as well. Middle Tennessee included. They look at regions. They look down to the local level too. That then they use the type of aircraft and the number of aircraft and they put in a formula for it based on number of operations on that side.
But is that a forecast for as soon as MTSU gets here, or is that a cast?
That forecast,
5 years from now?
it's usually based on like a 10-year process. So it's going to happen. It's not like it's all of a sudden we're going to do like a hockey stick, we're just going to jump like this, but it is going to in about 3. That's what one of the things that makes them nervous in about 3 to 5 years, it will take a significant jump. But it won't, and then it'll level off, but it'll not level off, but it'll slow down.
Right.
But it is over a process and over the life of
It's
the
not-
play out.
yeah.
So it's not like this is going to happen in 6 months.
Okay.
But anything with the federal government takes a long time to move. It takes a long time, so they get nervous and they want something that happens. 5 years from now, they get that used to be a joke when I worked with them a lot. It was like, if you want a runway extension, you told them 5 years ago that you needed a runway extension. That didn't really work, but that's the way FAA looks at things. So now anything that they see 5 years from now is going to get a lot of attention.
So are they pushing for a tower then? It sounds like
They will, the state of Tennessee FAA has not come out and said, yes, we'll support it. I've talked to them about it on the side and they say that makes sense and it would make sense for you to apply for one. But they don't say their support of it. Now, Aeronautics does. Aeronautics is in full support. They'll do whatever they can to help us out because they do see that being a necessity.
is that what's making them nervous and is the amount of operations in a given?
What
24-hour period?
makes them nervous is the fact that Memphis usually turns over right over there,
Right.
right on the other side, about almost midfield. They'll turn over to Nashville approach. But on the ground, you're talking to Memphis Center. Memphis
Right.
Center can't handle that. They're not configured as an approach or departure service. They're considered as a center. So they don't have the personnel. They don't have the configuration set up to space people, set some people up. So if you're trying to rely on Memphis Center as your approach, I mean, that they can't funnel you in that fast to handle that many people.
Right now, even from personal experience, they'll
Right.
ignore you for quite a while.
Right.
Yeah.
It's frustrating at times when they're busy.
Right. So Center is the one Center has the biggest concern.
Right.
And Nashville can't cover us quite well. Now, when they turn you over to Nashville, they're turning you over and you're above 35,000 feet. Not
Okay.
35,000, I'm sorry, 3,500 feet. You're at least at that or above. And they can see you. But when you start getting below that, they really have a hard time seeing.
Well, then when they turn you over, don't you join the local frequency at that point? Or should
No,
be monitoring?
No, I'm saying, like if you're inbound to Nashville or you're inbound to Murfreesboro or you're inbound to Smyrna from the south and you come up through here,
Okay.
this is where the Memphis Center will say, they'll
Contact.
give you contact Nashville approach
Okay.
and they'll give you their frequency.
And
And then
so-
you go through Nashville approach until you get to the tower frequency or until you get to the, then they turn you over to Murfreesboro, or they turn you over to Smyrna, whichever scenario.
So they're looking at the traffic in 5 years would be too much for Memphis to handle. Yeah.
Right, especially mixed with the fact that they're transitioning right there for Nashville.
Yeah.
They're transitioning for Smyrna. And so there's just the mixture. Murfreesboro, as a matter of fact, I met with Murfreesboro and TAD in reference to their airport layout plan that they're getting ready to start, and they've actually put theirs on hold. They've put their airport layout plan project on hold for at least 24 months, maybe or less. They're 12 to 24 months. They've put theirs on hold because of getting ours settled to match up to forecasting to make it match, because theirs is going to drop while ours increases. But in turn, they're trying to figure out how all it works. Because the biggest problem is that headquarters is looking at the fact that Nashville will be Class B airspace before long.
Well, it should have been some time ago, but so
Yes.
does that mean the options at that point are for Memphis to get more personnel or more capability, or hand them off earlier or further out before you get
They'll
to the,
change their procedure. They won't change personnel. FAA,
So then-
FAA is not about to help us out on that part of it.
so they're kind of watch this spring break happen.
Kind of,
Yeah.
kind of,
Yeah.
a little bit, but what they'll do is they'll change some of their procedures around. They'll try to reroute people into Nashville. They'll do different things like that, trying to redo some of the procedures, but they're not going to change their personnel. But what they will do is, yes, they will, if we're willing to work with MTSU, and we've been talking with the Guard and with MTSU, and we've been hoping to make it all work out to where we can find a way to do some kind of tower here, in the remote tower, working with the Guard.
A tower would certainly help, but working with MTSU in what regard, in terms of scheduling fewer flights or different times of the day or stretching them
Trying
out?
to help jump through some of the hoops to back up, as far as the backup for and support for getting a tower.
Okay.
Ideally, what we
Okay.
would like to do,
Right.
if if things work like they could and should, it would be incredible and would seem like it. That's why I hesitate, because it all seems so good. It all seems to work out so well that it's almost like when you say it that way, there's no way that's going to happen, because it's a win-win for everybody,
Mhm.
and nobody likes that for some reason. But what would be nice would be able to have, as part of MTSU's structure that they're building, to put an area for their control room. So they already have they had at one point in time a air traffic control simulator. It'd be something similar to that, but not quite so extreme. But they have an area, if they could build into their new building, an area, and then the Guard can train here. The Guard can relocate here. The 110 would like to relocate, looking for a permanent home.
Okay.
They could set up the procedures, and all we do here on our side is put the cameras up. But in turn, MTSU gets the host on their campus, that control tower, which also works well for their students to be able to see,
Absolutely.
but it also gives them support. I mean, everybody's helping. I mean, you have one other state agency helping another state agency, helping a local government, making aviation safe, and there's multiple things that are positives about it. The Guard's very excited about it, but it all comes down to money. So we'll see how that works. FAA, even in, like you said, in sidebar discussions, unofficial, nothing in paper kind of thing, FAA they seem to be, they're
Looking for the tower.
they would like to see something like that happen. But because of that, going back to the original thing, that our airport layout plan is behind schedule. It has held it up. FAA's held it up quite a bit. State's pretty frustrated. I'm sure the consultants are frustrated, because they should be somewhere in the 80% range right now, and they're still stuck at 30. And they can't go any further, because until that gets released by FAA, they can't. And they could potentially do some drawings and do some works with me, but they can't really charge for it. So they can't do that until they can get paid for it. So we've just been in a holding pattern as far as that's concerned.
And it's still stuck in DC.
Yes, as of right now, there was something that she just recently got some numbers for, and seems to be moving, but yeah, they're still holding before they can release the consultant to continue on with more. But she was waiting. State and I are available Friday to make a conference call, and I was waiting to see if she was waiting to see if our consultant was able to get on it too. So hopefully she's got some more information for us on Friday that she can follow up on that. Another thing I just forgot to print out. For the next, one of the other items on the list that we might have to get a plan here in a second. The other project we have a design project, actually two design projects that are out there. One is for the taxiway. One is for the corporate hangar development. Corporate hangar development was a build grant. Their timing was off. And so we have submitted, the city has approved and submitted a time extension. And we have submitted to the state of Tennessee for an extension on that grant for a year because it took them over 6 months to get and they haven't gotten any better according to the state. We just recently met with the state in reference to all of our other projects in their capital improvement plan for the state. And they're still running that far behind on all their different bill grants. As a matter of fact, they're in, I think, request number 6, and they've only received the first 2. So they're still that far behind as far as getting all the grants and everything issued. So we've requested that extension. We will also be requesting more money on that. As far as those are the open projects that we have currently with the state, except the sewer's not with the state. We requested with the projects under our ACIP, the biggest one that we've requested is the taxiway. We've pushed everything else off to the later in the years. We're updating it. We have to submit it by the 1st of September, but what we're submitting for our number one priority, number one project, we're pushing everything we can to get a taxiway. The current estimate on the taxiway is $1.3 million. We don't have that kind of set aside with the state from federal and or state money or anything like that. So we're having to piece it together, working with the state, trying to come up with a little bit at a time if we can. I don't know if it means doing dirt work 1 year, gravel 1 year, asphalt 1 year. I mean, it's a shame we have to go through it that direction, but that's kind of what we are. We're handcuffed by the money. That will open up that 10 acres. We have people waiting. We have 3 businesses waiting to utilize some of that property if we could just get to it. I don't know how long they'll wait. Unfortunately, Eric and I just discussed that briefly before. There's many examples in aviation, and he can give you one right off the cuff, that build ready sites are a big deal, and we don't have them. I'm trying to make that happen, but it all comes down to money. And, just getting utilities, getting access to it. So I'll be requesting separately. It's against what TAA is asking for, but there were this past budget found out that Sumner County went around the aeronautics and they got more money in one county than aeronautics did as a whole from the state. They got $15 million. No, $12 million. I'm sorry, $12 million. They got $10 million at Music City and $2 million at Portland in their county at their airport set aside from state grant, just to set aside. So I'll be working with Pat and Shane to try to get something here.
Good.
Now they'll say, well, we just got you $5 million, which does show up as $5 million, but that's for sewer.
Right.
I need something.
Yeah.
We need something more than that. We need for the asphalt. So we'll be working with them, trying to see if we can find a way that direction.
Anybody related to the governor?
We'll see. That was put in our city CIP too, but that's also the same as fire truck and other things of that nature. So it's hard for that to swallow, but they're familiar, they're aware, and same thing with our corporate hangar out there too. That's still on the list. And but as far as future planning, the other things, there were still some property acquisition, but the biggest part that you'll see on our ACIP is the continuation of that taxiway. So not only is the 1.3 will just get us started.
Hmm.
Then each year from that point forward, you'll still need to request another $1 million to continue that taxiway.
Yeah.
Then we've got to start on the south end, developing that and getting into that piece of property, the other 15 acres that are available on the south end.
Right.
The newly acquired property.
The newly acquired property, right? So that's another that will, so you'll see from this point forwards on our ACIP, all it is going to be is taxiway development from this point forwards, trying to get access to that. And hopefully then on a local level, we can eventually start building hangars. So that's what I have for a current projects update. What's been submitted. The cities, we'll see how things flesh out on the budget. But as far as the, the projects, mostly everything that's just for the, as far as the current budget, has been rollovers from things that are out there right now. And nothing new so far shows up, is showing up as being available just as of yet, but we're in the process.
Any comments? So next we go to a juror lease update.
Well, we have a couple of gentlemen here in the corner that have, they're not in the corner because I put them there. They just happen to work that way. They've been in working with MTSU's staff as well to review and update. So I was hoping maybe we can sort of touch base and bring this back up and try to keep this moving because I don't want it to get stale and I needed to keep it going. I know that Ginger hasn't had a whole lot of time to look over some things. But I thought it would be ideal to go ahead and bring it up. And also, if you have any question of these gentlemen, I don't know if we want to. One of the things that I did want to point out is that they're having to do some changes on the exhibits. One in particular is the fact that from where we initially discussed and where we initially laid out, when they first approached us, seems like years ago now, when they first approached us, the area that they needed is being moved. Now it needs to move even further to be able to get MTSU access to the runway. Because right now the 16 acres that they have no access to it without, they've got to get their lease built. And so it's got to be shifted down somewhat even more, which will change some of their taxiway, which is probably going to change some of their costs and things. So they're redoing their exhibit right now. That'll be part of that layout. Because the farther south that they go towards town, the more the change in the elevation happens between the taxiway, the parallel taxiway and the ground itself. So we're waiting on some of those changes, but also MTSU in turn is also from their initial submittal that they had cut back on some of the buildings because they see the need for that to cut back. And some of the ideas have changed on how they were going to use it. So we're waiting on that exhibit for one thing. And then they know one of the things that will happen is similar. When that gets finalized, when they get in there, we'll have to do some final adjustments on the number as far as they don't want to lease any more space than they have to. So they have a general idea, but until they can get it built, till they get it in final design, as far as the square foot is concerned, they know it's 35 cents a square foot. But that exhibit needs to be adjusted too, as far as how that's to be handled or to be addressed. That makes sense. It sounds familiar. Yeah. And so is there anything that you want to mention as far as your
I think what we're looking for, and Martin's here. Jeff Fair is on vacation, I think.
Mission trip,
Mission.
sort of vacation.
Kind of vacation. And Jeff, just to remind everybody, that MTSU's in-house now. So Margaret is aviation expert counsel for MTSU, and she's here. So she can answer legal questions that would be more at the level of good attorneys. But I think at a high level is what we're looking for is to get approval from the board for the legal language of the agreement with the idea that we're going to fill in the exhibits as we get the information to fill in the exhibits. It's not going to change the structure of the lease or how the lease terms are defined. It's just going to, the square footage. In fact, in this agreement contemplates the idea that we could execute the agreement and it's 35 cents a square foot, but the square footage may change when we come up with a final design. So part of this process is once we get approval from the board for this agreement, we have to execute the agreement with the airport authority in the city. And then it has to go to the state of Tennessee for approval, which is probably a 2-month process. We also have to, in turn, finalize our agreement with MTSU. This is a chicken or the egg thing. And so we can't finalize our agreement and execute our agreement with MTSU until we know what the legal language is here. We can't have something in a sublease agreement that contradicts what's in this agreement. So getting this approved by the board, I would, how you term it, and would be something to the effect that the board approves the legal language of this agreement, subject to attorney review, in-house attorney review, and subject to all of the addendums or schedules being attached and reviewed. And I'm just kind of trying to lay it out at a high level in non-legal terms. And David and I can answer questions. David can answer questions. You mentioned if we move it further to the south, that's going to change our numbers. Well, part of our agreement with MTSU and doing the leasehold improvement is to incorporate the value of the leasehold improvement on the land into a financial lease structure where we lease it to MTSU and so we can't give them a number until we know where it's located. So there's a lot of moving pieces that we have to work in parallel. Not some things have to happen before others, but we also are continually working on in parallel as we go down this path to getting it all together and having an agreement signed with you all, an agreement signed with MTSU, sublease agreement that allows us to put the money in place to get the bulldozers out and start moving the dirt. As a reminder, because I know this has been an 18-month process, what it looks like we're going to be doing for MTSU is really building a ramp to park airplanes, a parking lot to park cars, some fencing that goes in that separates the airport operations area from what's outside the fence. With that ramp, drainage and utilities and things that go with a 7-acre ramp roughly. And in addition to that, MTSU will have a mobile office, I'll call it a mobile office building, probably around, these guys are working with us to get a final idea of exactly what they need, but we're going to say 4,000, 5,000 square foot mobile office structure that will sit on a pad. Once they're permanent facilities are developed 3-4 years from now, that mobile office building will go away. So either we lease that and sublease it to them, or they lease it directly from the manufacturer of that. But there's going to be no permanent structure above the ground, no permanent building structure. Originally, we had a hangar contemplated in that for maintenance. That hangar is now going to go on the land that they've already agreed to lease from you all direct, offset.
That reminds me of one thing, because of the fact that they've gone to that temporary structure versus a permanent like hangar and things of that nature, that has changed the environmental impact for the state. The state's requiring us, we're working through that process now. And so they're anxious for all this to get settled somewhat too, so that they can finalize the environmental, because of the fact of who their tenant is and the other numbers that are associated with the other piece of property and the other lease, there's going to actually have to be a noise analysis done. And that's an environmental expense that I was hoping that consultant was going to be able to give me those numbers by today. I haven't received those as of yet, but I haven't been able to check my email in the last little bit. But
That's something the city would have to do.
the city has to do the environmental, yes. And what I've discussed with Azure is finding a way to try to see if there's a way for it to possibly go through their process into their lease.
Their shifting of facility is not going to get onto the property that we own, the city has retained, or is it?
Their piece,
When he's
they've
talking
already,
about, they're just shifting on their piece of property that they're, is that
Yeah.
what you're talking
Yeah.
about?
The-
It's not gonna come onto the property that the city
No.
owns, okay.
No, it's the original
Okay,
airport property. It's just taking that rectangular ramp and moving it so that it lines up with MTSU's
Okay,
permanent development. The ramp will ultimately be their ramp.
That's,
That'll tie into their hangars and they'll have more ramp that goes into your area, but they'll do that.
okay.
For their long term.
if you recall, the discussions that we had, we discussed having aeronautical and non-aeronautical.
Right,
So their aeronautical land will join UTSU's aeronautical land, and the overall hope is that eventually it will just all be considered and listed under MTSU as one,
Yeah.
as one structure, one lease.
So at this point, is it in our hands right now as far as the lease goes, Ginger? or-
I don't think that was in your packet. I don't think I've seen it. Have you?
I haven't seen it. So if I understand you correctly, you're essentially asking the board to go with the current legal language.
Well, what Ginger
Until
has,
she
what you have.
comes back and gives us what
Yeah.
is.
Well, it would have to be with what we presented, what Margaret and Jeff, our attorney Sandra Trail sent to Ginger.
Right.
And, in fairness to her, she got that last Thursday. And so a week ago. And, if you can't vote on it today, then we just need to figure out how to get it done. If you hadn't seen it, that's you all's decision.
Paul, you
Let's-
sat down with them and reviewed it, have you?
Well,
The newest revision?
Yes. One of the things that I'm curious, I don't know for sure, that's why I was wanting to bring it up, I hate to have to keep bringing this back
Yeah,
to
I
you
do
guys
too.
over and over again. So, is there anything that the board can do to say, we basically know that it's past our review, is it on to the next? I mean, is it, because we're down to, for the most part, we know that their lease has to coincide with legal changes that were done to the previous lease. And so it's going to come down to a per square, and as long as there's not an adjustment.
Mhm.
Now, I could see that if for some reason, I don't want it to happen, but if I could see for some reason when it goes up the flagpole, it comes back down and says, we're not going to pay 35 cents a square foot. Shouldn't, because everybody else, I mean, that's what everybody else pays on the airport. So it shouldn't happen. But if for some reason that were to happen, and then we have to address it another time. But other than that, is there a possibility of a way that basically the board can say, we've done our review, we've done our part, don't break it, there's unless something crazy changes, there's not a reason for it to come back to us. Does that
Well,
make
that's
sense?
that's up to them if they feel comfortable passing something they haven't read.
If Paul has reviewed it and is okay with it for the most part, then.
Well, that's.
I think this board is probably pretty familiar. I mean, this is the cat that keeps coming to your house and you drop him off down the street and he comes back. Over and over.
Quit feeding that cat.
I mean, I at least feel like I'm pretty familiar with the terms and conditions and I have great trust in our legal counsel and our airport manager. I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, conditional approval, then we pass it on up to council.
I'd agree with you, yeah, if Paul's okay and Jim just says, technically and procedurally it's okay, then let's
Great.
get them on their way.
We're following your policies as far as you established 35 cents as a rate. It comes down to what the final square footage is. And
Sure, that's
as
just formulaic,
bills do that, or, drawings do that. So
right?
that, that's even a third party that says this is the final square footage. So, and then all you gotta do is math.
Hmm.
That doesn't have to change unless for some reason it comes back, and I don't see why it should, but there's always, I guess you never have to leave that 1% out there for a
But at
chance.
this point, we're approving for the 35 cent.
You've already done that basically. They're following your
Right.
current policies.
But I mean, that's what they're,
Yeah, so it would just be that,
So how would we help us construct a motion here? How
You
would
just
we
move
word it?
to recommend that to council upon conditional recommendation based on approval, my review.
Okay,
you got the
no. So let's see,
Just
I'll
make it a
make a
con-
motion that we conditionally approve the lease for Azure based on legal review and
Recommendation. to
and
council.
recommendation from the airport manager
To council.
to the council.
have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
The second, first is from Eric Larson. The second is Eric Zord. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Okay, motion carries. Congratulations.
One more step and all.
yes, we
We'll get
You
there.
go parallel and then you get a little king in it.
Yeah, I guess I got it, yeah.
Okay, so moving on is rate discussion.
Okay, I'm waiting for one thing. Oh, never mind. Here it is. This is John, by the way. He's our summer intern. So if you're needing somebody for future aviation manager, there you go. There's your guy. He helped me lay out, per your request, different airports. He went through the process of surveying. You got it laid out on a map there. Basically a 50-mile ring around the airport. And then he even jumped out even further and started trying to work on as far out as 75-mile ring around the airport of airport service pricing. If you were asking about that as far as rates and things of that nature. He even called the guys in the corner. Sure, there's an next. Yeah. There's some. So you can start, I mean, you can easily see the layout, the way it's done is, he covered quite a bit. One of the things that would ultimately, I'm trying to encourage him. One of the things that an intern has to do is, it's just part of his classes is to write a paper about his experience. And so I'm hoping that he can probably do a great analysis about this and find different ways to analyze this, because actually TDOT is in the process of paying consultant a lot more money than you're getting paid to do something like this, and where they use one consultant to actually collect all this data, and then they use another consultant to build an algorithm to analyze it, and to then in turn you put in the information into a website, and they generate what you should be charging at least. And so what it is really backup, so that when it comes time to establish your rates, because aeronautics is very disappointed, and it's been brought up before, and the rates that are being charged at airports, especially for T hangars. And to the point that in their presentations, they even show you, is your airplane worth less than your boat's worth, a boat slip at Center Hill or anywhere, how much more you're paying there than people pay for a hangar here. And how much, and that's just, and you're lucky if you have a cover over the top of it, much less having it all enclosed, all, with the door and all that stuff like that. So, in the process, they'll be encouraging from all the time, because of the fact that money's less and less money out. So here's the information.
Which page is ours on?
I actually thumbing through it. I didn't see it.
I didn't see ours.
I didn't see it anywhere. These people that are providing no information provided, they just didn't, after you made the request, they just didn't answer.
When I called the airports, there was some of them, getting in contact with the management.
And they gave me what they supplied, and then after trying to get contact with the manager.
They've left us out. They've left us out.
Well, then, why is it here?
Our airport. Yeah, no, our airport's on
I
the.
thought we might know that.
Yeah.
We probably should.
Why?
So,
Yeah, because, well, for instance, Nashville, probably the highest one in here, with the exception maybe of John Toon.
Right.
I didn't see John Toon
John Toon's on the very first,
on the first
page, yeah.
so I had him go ahead and leave he did reach out to the air carriers and I went ahead and had him leave those, some of those in there, but they're so far extreme. I mean, they're charging they're charging more in one night than we charge an entire month.
Huh.
So that's kind of extreme.
So are we able to use those high-end numbers? Are we able to use them as relative numbers to compare for the high end? Or in other words, Nashville is charging, what are they charging?
600 and something.
Six something a
G
month for
hangers.
G hangers. And
The next one.
right there. Go back.
Yeah.
You'll find
Six
big
fifty-four.
Nashville.
Before, but
Yeah.
she kind of mentioned, oh, we can't use Nashville. And so my question was then, well, why is Nashville even in here? We can't use the figures.
Part of it
So-
is because of the fact of, as has been mentioned before, and I've mentioned to a lot of people, there's kind of a ring that's out there. If you look at the way airports seem to do, is you could almost look a ring around metropolitan areas. So you can look a ring, you can see the ring around Nashville, you can see the ring around Memphis, you can see the ring around Knoxville. You can almost say that at Chattanooga, but not really. Chattanooga is too small. Tri-Cities too small. They're air carrier airports, but they don't have the support. They don't have the services. So they're, in themselves, they have one FBO at each, right? And so they're not even competing against themselves. So they don't have that issue. But what you see is you start seeing a ring. So you go out the next county out, that's touching Davidson County, for example. This is the one I use the most because we're the closest one. But you start touching out Rutherford County, Wilson County, Sumner County, all those guys like that. So you're going to see the prices. If you look at this prices, you'll see the prices of Smyrna. You see the prices of Murfreesboro, but then of course you see the price of Lebanon. You see the prices of Music City. You'll see a difference, just like you see a difference between Smyrna and Murfreesboro. You see a difference between Music City or Gallatin and
Okay,
Portland.
exactly.
And Portland, you see the difference in it.
Let's
But
use,
each one of those rings going out, and then there's another ring that needs to go the next ring out. And then where does that next ring start falling off?
And
At
that's
some
what I
point in
wanna-
time, the next
what I
ring
wanna
starts
know is
dropping back
what
down.
criteria do we use to eliminate this one and keep that one?
That's a good question. That's a very good question. That's the issue is we're in that gray area. We're in the line that the prices start dropping because once you go past us, you start seeing some of the prices down in Pulaski, some of the prices in Lewisburg and places like that, the stuff starts going back down. And that's and a lot of that, based on my experience I've seen, is because there's a lot of old school that's still there saying, well, it used to be that nobody would come out this far, or we don't have the money out here, so nobody would rent the hangar out from us if we charge that much.
Maybe it
Well,
used to be,
It used to be that way. It's
but
not that
but
anymore.
brand insurances haven't changed in terms of how to develop your rate structure.
True, but the industry itself has changed and economic,
But
and
the
economic
brand
area.
insurance haven't changed in terms of telling us how we can determine the rate structure schedule.
But also the FAA is also not changed in the fact that you're supposed to be, they didn't enforce really the fact that you're supposed to be working towards being self-sufficient.
The self-sustainability. So that's why we would need a report from the city in terms of how we're doing each year toward reaching self-sustainability. I will suggest that with MTSU coming down here and with the super hangar, the jet hangar being built, we would more than reach self-sustainability. Okay, so
But
that,
we're getting there, except for the fact that the way the MTSU lease is set up currently, the yes, their rent is showing up under my account, but it's really not coming under mine because it's turning around and being used for the purchase. So it's not, I'm not getting the full credit it's needed, the way it was, the way it finalized.
Would you eventually?
It will eventually, once that gets split apart and there's aeronautical and non-aeronautical,
Right.
all the aeronautical will be under the airport.
Right.
Yes.
So that gets into the area of long-term planning that the grant assurances ask you to do. If you can't reach self-sustainability in the near future, come up with a long-range plan that will get you to self-sustainability. And so if that's the case, that Murfreesboro's money will not apply to all of it to the airport, but long-range it will. You said you can't use all of their money, right? But after a while,
Yeah,
It will.
eventually when it gets split apart and there's split the aeronautical and non, then
Wow.
yes, we will be able to get that
so
at least the ground.
is that long range?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just wondering, which one of these do we use as reference? When again, the grant assurances give you 4 or 5 ways to determine how to charge on your own airport. Because it's extremely difficult to go from airport to airport, all of these that he has here, even though they're in the inner and middle rings, it's difficult to compare likes and dislikes of that airport, why they charge this much, why they don't charge this much, what services do they offer? Do they have fuel, self-service? Do they have tie downs? Do they have a community hangar?
He's got
How
a
long
lot,
is their
he's got a lot
airport?
of that listed down through there. So you can see
Yeah.
a lot of that and take a look. And that's the fun part of this process is, yeah, how do you make that determination and are you going to be a leader or a follower too? So, I
Well,
mean, that's-
absolutely. So that's why I was wondering, what criteria do we use to go no further or to continue to progress, or
Well-
to progress forward?
From my perspective, I was brought in to be a leader, not a follower. So I'm gonna look at it from
With your
that, I'm gonna look at it
suggestions.
from that perspective, is I'm gonna push.
Right.
I'm gonna push to try to push it up to where the level of services here. I'm gonna increase the level of services, increase the professionalism of the airport, but in the meantime, you gotta increase the price to go with it.
And the grant assurances have no problem with that. And they state very clearly that you should be using what it costs for you to run the airport, to operate the airport. That's what you should be shooting for when it comes to setting up your rate structure.
So maybe a good place to start, Paul, is you're in the middle of budgets right now. What is our expected budget shortfall at the airport this year? How much deficit will the city have to kick in to keep us afloat?
We have been we've been operating somewhere in the $300,000 to $400,000 a year range is where we've been usually falling short.
Right.
So the final numbers are of course not in for this year to see what that final is right now. I'd have to go back and pull up. I don't have it right in front of me to be able to pull it up, what the current, so it's actually on
That's
the report.
295,000
Sure.
range.
So that's, and so you're looking at having, 2 more months left to report on, or a month left.
So
So another month left to report on. So we're in that, we're back in that we're about that 350 range is where we run, somewhere in that neighborhood. And so
so
that's,
roughly 30 grand, 25,000.
our budget was submitted at a $29,000 increase from last year. This year's budget is $29,000 increase from last year's budget. And what that was an increase in fuel and the fees associated with selling more fuel. But in turn, I took about $30,000 off from some other stuff too. So it's, about a $60,000 swing, mainly is associated with purchase of more fuel, credit card fees that go with that, some other things that go with the fact of some of that stuff. Now, is our revenue going to go up? Yeah, but there's always some other things too that are in there that I need to.
Well, nothing would prevent us in the future if we raised rates now, and when MTSU's rent does finally kick in after this period of free rent, we could always lower our.
Does it usually happen?
No.
I knew that.
No. Oh, I mean,
Next time I mention that, I just laughed at.
I mean, that's theoretically, yes. In theory, sure, you could do that. I mean, if you had a scenario where, something would have happened to the hangars or something like that, and for some reason But that would be very unusual for that to be the case, because I don't plan on letting the hangars get into a situation where that would be an issue.
I understand. I just, it's one way of addressing Eric's concern that, hey, look, long-term down the road, the MTSU activity is going to help create a self-sustainability at the airport.
That is the hope. Yes, that's the plan.
That's down there. My concern is, how do you fill that $30,000 a month gap right now?
Sure. I agree. And the only thing that's consistent,
According to the FAA, as best you can,
Yeah,
without being extreme.
yeah.
And they use the term fair and reasonable.
Yeah.
Which can be construed in a number of ways, but because the airports really are here to serve the public. That's the FAA's main interest is the public. Not whether or not you make so much profit off of it or not, and how quickly you get to self-sustainability. Are you treating your flying public as well as your general public fairly? Which is kind of difficult to find nowadays.
But here's we are, and there's national, so you just kind of almost look at.
When was the last time the hangar rates were
Right
increased here?
around you.
When was the last time our hangar rates were increased here?
counties that touch.
No, I don't think we did it last year. I think it was the year before that.
Year before
You're
last.
right.
I was
Yeah.
thinking,
Outcry, that was
Next
last
range
year.
is the one that
Outcry,
counts.
everybody
That-
showed up here.
It's kind of the way you look at it.
It's us.
But
Yeah.
you're looking at it from,
Oh,
you look at it also drive times.
When was the last time we had a rate increase? It's been 2
Increased.
years or was
Almost
it?
2 years now.
2
Not
years.
quite.
2
It'll
years.
it'll be
That's
2
what
years
I'd
in
like to
September.
see a report from the treasurer's office.
It'll be 2 years.
How close you're getting each year in terms of reaching self-sustainability.
Correct.
there was a pretty good outcry though when that went
There
up.
was a hell of an outcry.
I think I remember a little bit
It
of that.
doubled.
I wasn't in the position I'm in now, but I,
I thought it was in
you heard it out in the, out
Was it 21?
in the
It
city.
was,
Well, the
it was
problem,
actually in January, so.
because of that is because
For a while.
there was
So-
never an increase for
Right.
what, 20 years?
12 years.
Right.
So,
Right, and that's what happens with taxes and stuff.
That's
You
just
don't do it a little bit at a time, you know.
Yes, over a year.
so
year.
we're at that.
We're at that again.
Yeah.
Because we tried to change it earlier than that, and we did double. it.
One suggestion some time ago was to bring in a
Fall of 21. Everybody thought it. and then-
real estate agent who's familiar with airport property and airport rates and things of that nature.
Yeah.
To help us put that together.
Don't we still have a waiting list for hangars?
We have over 100 on our waiting list. Right?
So if you increased it, you wouldn't have to worry about having empty hangars. You've got people waiting, right?
Reasonably.
But those that we had, the last
Yeah.
time the increase came, we had one airplane leave, and that's because he also had a hangar in Murfreesboro. He had 2 hangars.
Okay.
And so he moved to
He sold
Murfreesboro.
his plane, didn't he? I thought he sold one.
Now, we had some that sold, but no, we had one gentleman that actually said, I'm leaving because of the price. I'm not paying the price, and he left. But if I could.
Well, the
30
thing-
people could come to me now and say, price is too high, I'm leaving. And there would be 30 moving trucks
That's what I
tomorrow
thought.
showing up to help move them out
What
as
I've
fast
heard.
as they possibly can.
But the thing about
Right.
how many's on the waiting list, these same people are also at neighboring
You're right.
airports on the
Right.
waiting list
Sure.
too, so I don't know how
Yes.
the numbers play out.
No, they don't. You can't really look at that
But they're
completely because
still,
they're looking and,
Mhm.
but I have, like I've mentioned before, we actually get phone calls here saying there's people that will call and say, I'm looking to move to Tennessee.
Mhm.
But I'm calling, trying to find a place for my airplane. So they're gonna move where they can find a place for their airplane.
yeah.
So there's been some people that moved, instead of moving to Middle Tennessee, have moved to East Tennessee because they could find a hangar in Greenville. And they
To me,
chose to
that-
live out in the middle of nowhere instead.
That is exactly why some of these low numbers don't mean it really too much to me. The important fact is there isn't a hangar available. That makes every hangar valuable.
You know,
So we're back to determining the value of our hangars and what kind of increase we're gonna
What
have.
was
I
the
don't think it's a
dimensions
good
of the
idea
two hangars?
to double the rate and
45.
then watch the fallout.
42.
And those that leave and the ones that come in are willing to pay that
42 by
excessive
33.
rate. That's
33.
not a good idea. either. I don't think that's not reasonable.
but you could justify it by
So it's-
trying to meet, saying that we need to break even at least.
You can,
Is
well,
that right?
At least.
the statement says striving to become. You don't have to do it by this weekend.
All right.
You know, you are working towards self-sustainability, given your current circumstances. with
You
your
can-
current ability now.
One thing you can argue on and discuss on some of that is the fact that
Regular T rating.
That's 315 a month.
315 a month. One of the things that can be discussed is the fact that there's capital in that, or is it just operation? So some
Okay.
people will say that you need to start setting aside you need to have more than just your operations so that you can start saving money to go towards your capital improvements or repairs.
You know, well, they don't mention a lot of capital improvements. Especially if you go through, FAA Order 5196 Bravo or, what's the name of the order? Fair and reasonable fees. That's another word. Oh, I've got it here. Hang on.
On credit card fees, is that the fee that you have to pay to like the 2 or 3%? Have you ever thought about passing that along to the customer? So many more are doing that.
Well, that's been discussed and that's done at the city level. But the amount of processing that we do, I've just always considered it like any retail, it's just a cost of doing business. I mean, there's very few that would, big purchases like a tuition of property taxes or something like that's more where I've seen that kind of thing. And not necessarily on a
I
day-to-day
even see
type.
a lot of gas stations now have the cash and credit card.
Right.
Well, they've had that for a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
They claim that they give you a discount for, really you're paying extra
But
for
we-
paying credit.
But they're just not gonna pay
They call it
for it.
they call it a cash discount, but.
Rebates. It's under the Federal Register policy regarding airport rates and charges. They don't really speak to operations versus, other service charges, if you will. Hangar rents, landing fees, things of that nature. Well, that's an operational fee, but they speak more to, what you're going to charge for your hangars, what you're going to charge for, tie downs, what are you going to charge for things of that nature? Aeronautical associated activities,
Sure.
that kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I'm not asking you to get into the services. We're just looking at the rent, for
Right.
things that require.
What it
signatures.
costs to run your operation, basically. is what it costs.
We're looking, the other services are what you hope will make up the difference. It's
Right.
just what you need is a baseline. And that's what you're establishing as the baseline so that we can work from.
Well, certainly in the 2 years since we've raised rates, inflation has been at very high levels, with 8% one year and over 5%, almost 6% the next year. So we've slipped 14%. Our effective purchasing power has slipped 14% on our rents just by doing nothing. So just to raise rents 14% just puts us back to where we were 2 years ago.
And again, that's why you need to see the report from the treasurer's office to see how closely we're getting to self-sustainability on a yearly basis, on an ongoing basis.
Better worse or the same.
If it's the same, then okay, because we've got a long range plan. But if it's worse, then we might want to look at, I have a real issue, not a real issue, but I have somewhat of a problem with adjusting our rates due to temporary market forces such as the pandemic. The prices are beginning to come back down. And as you mentioned, will we bring our rates back down as the prices come back down, the prices of service and materials and things of that nature? We'll be so used to charging and using that money, it's going to be hard to bring it back down.
Struggling to find a time when prices really, when we've seen deflation for any period of time, and we haven't. So I think prices continue to go up. Maybe they level off a little bit, but inflation marches on.
Inflation does march on, and so I have no real problem with the CPI index increase to a 3%, something like that, and then maybe something on top of that to catch back up to our lost 14%. But wholesale rates increases, and I understand Paul's point, but the objective of the airport and the FAA's objective is to provide services for the public and specifically for the general aviation public, and make it as fair and reasonable as possible. It is not an airport receiving federal grants, is not a for-profit operation. You don't have to make a profit. You have to work toward becoming self-sustainable.
If you mentioned that at the Nashville Airport Authority meeting.
They run you out of the room.
Yeah.
Right, and that's the problem, because you let greed get in the door, and next thing you know, you've got $600 for a hangar.
Okay, could probably have the numbers for the year in August. Well, maybe
Yes.
not your August meeting,
But you can,
September.
yeah,
September, she would have everything for the year.
you can see, I mean, based on current trends, I mean, we're gonna be in the somewhere between 3 to 4, so we're about the 350 short. So that's as far as operations is concerned.
And that's 30, you said 30,000 a month, so short.
29,100 and something, yeah.
And so that at one point, I mean, that's when you originally brought up the hangars and you doubled the rent. That was the idea. It made up all the difference. Well, we learned that can't quite do
That
it
one
that
way to
You
do it.
can't quite do it that way. It was much as I enjoyed it. But can't quite do it. But you can do something similar and then, in another, and I think that they're all prepared. And I think they all know that we will eventually find our way back there. I think they realize that, and especially with, I mean, I just listening to others in the industry. I mean, even just listening here on the field with Mac Air, Charles said, I can't charge enough. He said, I keep raising my rates and they still keep coming. He said, I can't get, so they're overwhelmed. They don't have a room. I could hardly drive I was trying to do a security check the other day and I had a hard time getting my car across his ramp. Much less trying to find another place to put an airplane, just because he's so covered up. And he says, I don't know where they're coming from. He said, but they're coming from somewhere. And so, I mean, I said, well, I hate that problem for you. That's so much work. But it is almost to the point it is a detriment in some cases, because it means some people, but he says people are just getting used to having to wait. They're getting used to the process, but they're still putting the money. Aviation, for some reason, is still putting the money there. I think it's going to take something hard like 07 that's going to take something to make to do some kind of hit. But I mean, ask Eric how he can find employees to work on airplanes because they're being stolen.
Can't do it.
I mean, so the industry is just full speed ahead. I mean,
Can't find boiler installers either.
yeah, but you got 3 guys across the back there that are telling you every day how much what the struggle is for their people that are coming out of their system. I mean, they're almost begging them to go ahead and just skip graduation and come on, just go to work because they need them in the industry.
So what was your thought in terms of a timeline on moving on this?
I mean, we need to, because anything that we come up with, we'll have to go through.
Because it's really not done that here.
Anything we come up with will have to go through our, the council and things like that. So we need to go ahead and start the process.
Last Thursday of the month.
Ours,
Last Thursday of the month. That'll get you in front of our study session.
Well, yeah, we're going to that next, but
Oh, I
you're,
think that's what you thought.
No.
she's talking about when we want to try to do a rate increase.
Oh,
What's your overall plan in terms of studying? Because y'all probably want to go back, you spent so much time, you and David McGee
I
did
remember.
a lot of
Right.
work
Right.
together, and you wrote policy. There's documents that we could go back and look over.
Absolutely, and when we finished up, we were still behind.
Yeah,
Yeah, so I understand that everything goes up and we need to keep up with it, but not quite as radically as some people seem to think that we need to,
Absolutely.
And you're thinking
They're 3 pages.
August, what the.
Oh, to debate this issue.
No, I have an answer.
Oh,
put it on your agenda, and then that Kay would get through right now. Probably not gonna be able to pull, I mean, besides what your reports are now from the airport. I mean, you can see what you are, but they're in budget right
Yeah.
now.
And that's, I was.
Try not to ask
for that,
Yeah,
absolutely.
don't ask that question.
But
They'll ask her another question this month, I can tell you that.
Okay. And that's the month of June.
Yes, because they have all kind of meetings through this month to get their budget done by the end of June.
Oh, yes.
Well, that's why I was bringing up, y'all don't normally meet in July.
Well, that's one of the discussion items next
Right.
is changing that date, and potentially you could still meet in July, just meet at the end versus
different-
meet instead of
right.
meeting instead of skipping July like we usually do because of the holiday conflict, end up meeting the 4th Is
And
what-
he said the last Thursday, but it's.
It's really
Last Thursday of the
Fourth.
month.
fourth
Thursday.
Thursday of the month.
And
Yes,
just,
sir.
and meet again though in August?
You can meet in July, man.
Meet July, but just instead of meeting at the first,
It's
change
the
with the
fourth.
FY. And
Fourth.
if
Fourth Thursday.
And
that's
meet-
what you guys want.
And meet
to-
when?
Fourth Thursday of the
Of June or July?
July. No, you're in June's
That's right.
meeting today.
Right, but that'll be the 27th, and then you'll have another meeting just a week after that. Is that
No,
what you want?
Everything is pushed back to the fourth.
All the meetings will be the fourth Thursday now.
Right.
Oh,
So a
you're talking, I'm
permanent change.
sorry, you're talking about permanent.
Yeah, get them in front of.
We're,
sorry.
we're discussing
Good to
two
see
two
everybody.
line items at once.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're discussing two line items at once.
Okay, on rate discussion,
You have that. This is this is research.
Hi, Mayor.
What we need to, because the FAA gives you 3 or 4 ways in which to raise money.
Mm.
Or change your rate.
So y'all would like to do it the 4th?
So if
The
you want to
fourth
study
of the
that.
last. The 4th, bring it.
And come up.
Well, the reason I say that is on occasion, you get your study session,
we need to use.
I don't need it. Now, I asked.
Get it tomorrow.
you'll get it the month before. I'm like on this one,
Crew chief on.
second. So, well, if you did it the 4th,
Dugan.
that'd be fine.
Yeah.
I just was wondering if you might find some
They
time.
changed it. You're thinking about Benson. He's.
No. He's inside.
He's gone.
The outside guy. He goes to work.
It's the outside guy with Garver.
Who's the outside guy that does it? The supervision on
One
work?
that did our,
Deegan. is his name.
Daniel Deegan did
Daniel
ours.
Deegan, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
He sent me 2 names of real estate agents.
Okay.
So no, it's up to you guys.
The last.
Okay, so we'll put it on the agenda for fourth Thursday of July.
That'd be fine.
If that's, but you, I mean, that's still another item you guys still gotta vote on, changing
You want
changing that date.
the
to
last
Yeah.
or the 4th?
Well, that's the next item.
Last.
That's the next item, but that's,
I'm afraid
I think it's the 4th.
The
You
fourth.
want to do it the 4th or the last?
Whichever one helps us coordinate better with city council.
that's the fourth.
So
Study session.
Yeah, I mean, because like I say, some months, we'll have our study session, we'll have 3 meetings in 1 month. We'll have 2 study sessions and a general business meeting.
Are they set for
That has
specific dates?
Yeah.
and-
Pardon?
Are they set for specific dates or?
Yeah,
The
City
study,
council.
yeah, city council's always your second Thursday.
the second Thursday.
The study session is the week before on Tuesday.
Yeah.
It's not tied to a date. It's tied to that second Thursday. Sometimes the last Tuesday of the month, sometimes it's the first Tuesday of a month.
Yeah.
Just depends on how it
So-
falls out.
So if going with the fourth Thursday, I can speak for Lisa right now because she did tell me that's the date that she would prefer. It fits her calendar the best. And it's also the same day as the planning,
Commission.
planning commission. And so the same thing. They have that date because of being able to, anything that they discuss, anything they
Rolls
need,
on.
rolls
It's
on,
on
can
to the-
make it to her agenda for the study session.
that makes sense to me. Yeah.
Okay.
Because there's certain now new requirements that were being reviewed at the last meeting about all the different changes to agendas and postings and things of that nature. So it would be best if we could get ahead of it, if that works for you.
Works for me. Well, then I make a motion that we permanently change our airport board meetings to the 4th Thursday of each month at noon.
We have a motion from.
With lunch cooked by.
We're gonna write that, I'm gonna write that in.
Yes.
Okay, so I have the motion from Eric Carson. I have a second.
And also,
A second from Eric Kazor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. So the motion carries to change the meeting dates. Okay, there is no new business. Any other business or announcements?
I did get just a clarification from Lisa on one thing about our agenda is not published because of the fact that we're advisory. So we have a bit more flexibility than some of the things that she was afraid of originally as far as our agenda is concerned. So there are some things that we need to
In terms of changing the structure or changing the order of things on the agenda, things.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
because of the type of board that we are, they have a lot more, we have more flexibility than she originally thought when she first brought up the fact that there were some changes in.
Okay.
Okay. Any citizens' comments? I have a motion to adjourn.
Go for it, Eric.
No, I'll gladly make that motion.
Motion to adjourn from Eric Larson. Do I have a second?
I'll say.
Second from Eric Resort. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you. all.
Thank you.
Not bad.
Been running about an hour and a half.
Yeah, right.
Good timing. Yeah.